I want to talk with Republicans about jobs. There's a lot available still, or at least there's companies posting jobs. As an employer, I can tell you I've left job postings up longer than I should have. And I can tell you as an economist, big businesses, corporations do that strategically just to kind of gauge the market. So the number of jobs available on Indeed and other sites is not a reflection of actual hiring and real jobs. It's not a representation of the actual money that those companies can use to hire. It's more like they have these needs, but they can't fulfill them. A lot of businesses will desire more employees, but not be able to actually follow through with the fulfillment of those. So it's a little lower, but still, there's jobs, right? Yeah, there's always jobs because people have to retrain, relearn, leave one job, go to another. There's always going to be some job openings because of just the way humans are and humans, like the way it's like common sense. We have to take a moment to find a new job and find the right one and maybe move or, uh, there's jobs here, but not there. There's always going to be some unemployment. What I want to talk to you about is labor force participation. What that means is the amount of people working versus the amount of people not working. Not just the number of people working plus the unemployed. So the labor force participation is how many people are working and how many people are actively looking for jobs. There are a lot of people who aren't working because they're a stay-at-home parent, they're in school and they don't need to work. There's a large proportion of there's maybe I forget what the rate is, but it's somewhere in the 30% ish range of like 30 to 40% of the economy almost always is people who aren't working. Children, elderly, disabled. And now some of these people are still working. Elderly people are still working, disabled people are still working, people in school are still working. But overall, about a third of our society doesn't really work at a paid job. And that number has been growing. And let me tell you why it's been growing. It's not a left versus right problem. There's been a cause that everyone's been neglecting. It's the reason why social programs have been effective, but it's also why they've been ineffective because they're not really addressing the core issue. They're like band-aids for for a problem that people didn't really ever address properly. It's I hope it's becoming very obvious in the age of AI what the problem is. We've always been competing with machines since the first industrial revolution. It's changed the way labor works in relation to the economy and in relation to industry. People like myself keep getting better and better at finding ways to do stuff with fewer workers. The more educated and skilled people are finding ways to do things with fewer and fewer workers necessary. And in general, that's okay because those people then become trained in ways to also utilize that automation. But the reason they're able to have the time to make those changes whenever old ways become inefficient and new ways become more efficient, people have to learn those new ways. It takes time and investments for them to survive while they're learning those new ways to contribute again. That's what unemployment is. That's what these social programs did. They basically gave people a lifeline to survive until they retrain. And it's necessary because of our competition with machinery and industrial processes. It's the algorithm, it's the AI, it's the robots. It's not the robot that is going to come do your dishes in your house. That is the problem, really, to think about. It's the automated drive, it's the automated car. Even the self-checkout, they could improve that and actually like make it so robotic soon that you would never have an employee. So like that's just the first stage of that. There's more stages to come of these things. Honestly, it's being stopped because we are scared for our jobs. And I think a lot of people are resisting new automated processes that could actually be good for civilization and reduce costs and reduce unnecessary labor that seems silly. These innovations are suppressing new innovations and new growth. And unless we find a way to actually redistribute the gains of automation, then we won't have to worry as much about redistributing everything else, all the rest of the social programs, all the uh, poor versus billionaires stuff would go away. It would resolve because the only reason billionaires got the way they were is because we weren't addressing the issues of automation. We made it really easy to extract wealth through automation at the expense of human labor. And that's what's happening right now. That's what everything is. That all the political battles all stem from this. And I'm a smart person. I'm very capable. And I spent a lot of time reading and learning about automation throughout history. I read all the books. I did all the work. I do the work. I don't just sit in talking points and make emotional appeals, insulting people and stuff. I did the work, and I'm here to talk to you honestly, all, okay? Now, I hope you're still with me because I'm going to explain the solution. Right now, the corporate tax rate, if we multiply that number by something unique to each business, which is their ratio of profit to labor, and we have a number unique to that business that will multiply against the corporate tax rate and increase it or decrease it proportionally. Now, what they're going to do is if they are really highly automated and are raking in profits, no labor, they'll have to redistribute that money to labor. Well, they'll have to hire more and pay more without it going to executive bonuses and stuff like that. It has to go to labor. Like there'll be caps of what they can deduct from their profit to labor variable, of course. But yeah, like anyone making under 200,000, they can deduct, right? So at least that money is going into a broader number of hands than just one automated king of industry or king of their industry. I owned a restaurant delivery service back before Uber Eats. It was called Delivery King. And had I not had a stroke and had some health issues and lost the business, I probably would have been one of the leaders in that. And I would have at one point had to have automated all of my drivers away just for the business to survive. Because if my competitor had automated their drivers and reduced costs and I didn't, my business would fail because I couldn't offer as low of a price. And everyone was going to need that lower price with the fewer workers in the economy, right? So, yeah, there's just this downward cycle in the economy that happens because of the competition between labor and machinery and AI and all that. And I acknowledge this. My degree is in economics, and then I was a boss by necessity in the Great Recession. And I learned a lot being a business owner. And I learned a lot in my years before that working as a laborer through school and from the time I was 14. The simple multiplier will remedy all the problems we've been having, and there won't be as much use of welfare programs. There won't be as much. The labor force participation rate will go up, wages will go up naturally without having to, like, each state their own minimum wage. Like there's just a lot of battles over each individual labor policy that happens, and so much work going into all these stopgaps and band-aids. And it's actually a lot of extra red tape for businesses and for workers combined to try to, like, oh, I have a job now, but oh, I got laid off and now I have to go back on food stamps, but I'm still looking for work. Oh, I found something, but it's only 20 hours a week. Oh, I lost that one because the business closed. Next, it's just, that's what happens, and yeah. And if we just solve the automation issue, then the rest of it would be like no worries, because then honestly, people who are just trying to be lazy would be visible. We'd be able to see the difference between the people who are just being lazy and the people who are falling through the cracks of a broken system. Because there's both, there's lazy losers, and then there's people who get knocked off of a pedestal because of broken things in the system.